Hi everyone, this is Mehul Mehta and welcome back to my YouTube channel. So today we have a very special guest. We have none other than Laura. So first of all, hi Laura.
Hi, Mehul. Thank you so much for having me.
Sure, sure. So just to give a context about who Laura is. So Laura is the Associate Director at Georgia Tech, and specifically she is Associate Director at Masters in Computational Finance program at Georgia Tech. So in today's podcast, what we'll do is we'll understand from Laura, like if in case you are a prospective student for fall 26 or spring 26, right? So
Yeah.
we'll understand from Laura, like how can a student build a good profile, what does the committee looks into the profile, or let's say if you have a bad GRE score, what can you do to improve your profile, and bunch of those questions. So please stay in, and thank you so much, Laura, for doing this podcast.
Oh, it's a thrill and an honor. I was saying before we started the recording, this is my very first podcast recording ever. So hopefully I do you justice and it's and nothing gets glitchy or anything like that. But I'm really I appreciate this opportunity. So thank you for having me.
Sure, thanks Laura. So like I'll start from very basic. Okay, I'm applying to Georgia Tech for masters in computational finance. What all things I should have just to file in the application?
Perfect. So I'll start, I always break it out when I talk about our admissions process in kind of two buckets, right? You have sort of your objective components that by and large are going to give us information of how academically prepared you are to be successful in the coursework itself. So, of course, we're going to drill into your transcripts, your resume to an extent I would consider to be somewhat of an objective piece. It's kind of on the border there. I would say. Your test scores, so GRE, GMAT, those types of exams, or your IELTS and TOEFL. If you pass the minimum for us, that's fine. We don't look too much into that as long as you clear the mark. So those are kind of more of the objective components of our application. And really, we're trying to understand, do you have the quantitative aptitude and the computational aptitude, right? It's in our title. Those things are most important. This is the type of program that your basic quant and programming skills, they need to be pretty strong coming in. Our faculty don't have time in order to teach the most cutting edge techniques. They don't have time to go back and teach the basics of these things. So having a really strong foundation in mathematics and coding is definitely a must. And then, sort of on the flip side, we have more of the subjective components of the application, your statement of purpose. There's an interview, short answer questions. Those are the things, and we can talk about this in a bit, that I think maybe can help candidates maybe distinguish themselves from some others in the process. So I'll leave it there. And something tells me we're going to kind of dig in. So we'll
For
stop there.
sure. Yeah, for sure. So let's say, okay, so I see a lot of students reaching out to me and they have these two issues. Okay. So I'll talk to you about the issues. First is, let's say I come from a tier two university. I have a strong GPA, but my GRE is not that great. Somewhere around, let's say 310, and let's say my con score is 165. I have given, let's say, GRE twice, but because of my work commitment, I'm also a working professional, and like I'm not just getting time. So what can I do to get into Georgia Tech?
Well, I will say, I mean, the applicant pool is competitive, right? And so for us, it's less about establishing minimum cutoffs and more about comparing the applicants to each other. And so when I would say for schools, we've plenty of students that have come from not top tier schools, right? I would say our admissions practices don't particularly screen for the institution unless it's like, I mean, our faculty know which institutions I think probably are a little bit considered more tier one, but that doesn't mean we discount applications from students that are not from the top schools. There are so many metrics that we look at in our application process, and we've had people that have come from schools that weren't top tier that have gone on to immense success. And so I wouldn't let that deter someone from applying. I don't think for our application process the school makes that much of a difference. The GRE might be a little bit different. We don't care about the verbal score at all, whether you know your synonyms versus your antonyms. Couldn't care less. We definitely are focused, obviously, for this purpose, more on the quantitative score. And I will say our average tends to be somewhere in the 168 range,
Mm.
simply because that's the competitiveness of the pool overall. So I would say if you're sitting below a 165, I'd probably go ahead and retake it. I know it's tough and people have work commitments, and I completely get it. But in the same time, thinking about our faculty when they're looking at this, pool of, I always say we could have easily 200, 300 people in our classes, especially our fall class. We get that volume of applications. That would probably on paper succeed. But at the same time, we have to hone in and make sure that we keep the class size manageable. And so that kind of increases the competitiveness overall, because we admit, probably relative to other programs, probably a bit of a smaller cohort.
Mhm.
So, for example, we had 65 students this fall, out of hundreds and hundreds of applications. And so the GRE is the only thing that allows us to really compare apples to apples. If you think about it, everyone's going to have different levels of work experience and come from different academic backgrounds and all of that. But the GRE is the one kind of objective measure across the board that we can say, okay, is it the most weighted thing in the application? Absolutely not. It's a check mark. You obtain this, and then we're going to look at a lot of other factors.
Okay, okay. And let's say the second type of students, right? I mean, they have a good GRE score, but their
Mhm.
GPA is, let's say, it's below, it's let's say average, or yeah, it's just average, or just, I would not say below average, but let's say just average.
I
So
understand.
yeah, so what should they do? Let's say if I have 6 months, or let's say if I have 1 year of time frame, what can I do to get into Georgia Tech, or let's say at least, so that like at least the admission committee feels like yes, he's also a good candidate.
I think that's well, I think having a strong GRE quant score in and of itself is very helpful, especially for GPAs on the lower side. I always say there are things in the application that can sort of counterbalance each other, right? Work experience is something that's valued, not required. I would say probably 65 or so percent of our students, give or take, come without any work experience. And maybe 35% have work experience. So that's something that can be valued in a different kind of a way, because you have actually put, your education into practice, and we can see that. It also shows us that you have successfully cleared interviews, and that's always another big part of this type of a program, being a professional master's. Um, but I would say for us, we, instead of looking at overall GPA, our faculty actually drill into those transcripts to look at the classes that would be the indication of whether or not you could be successful in this degree, right? So I say, if you took a literature class and got a D, that's we couldn't care less, right? It's more about how did you perform in your math classes? How did you perform in anything that is related to programming if you took such classes, or finance classes, or things that are going to give us an indication of how you would be capable to handle the academics. And then if that is a little bit on the, like, kind of the average side, then we're going to look at the other components, your test scores, and we're going to look at your motivation for wanting to do this is a big piece for us. Understanding, if you've had internship experience or full-time experience, all of those things play a role.
Okay, okay. And this one is a maybe tricky one. I don't know if it's a tricky one, but what are the some of the common mistakes that you see students doing, and you when you see that, or let's say when the admission committee sees that, you think the student should have done a better job. Like what are those stuff like which students at least should avoid, or anything of that sort, yeah.
I would say sometimes the biggest kind of red flags will be like, if I go into an interview and I can tell that somebody's not really taking it seriously.
Hmm.
um, I'd say treat the interview like you would a job interview, right? I do a 30-minute behavioral interview as part of my process. And I will tell you, we have had people that have perfect GPAs, perfect test scores, and I said, absolutely not. And I told our faculty committee, this person was, half asleep, no energy. And you don't have to be overly animated. That's not what I'm saying, but we have to see a drive to want to do this. As you know, this is arguably, we are in the most competitive time that we've ever been in, with the financial markets and the demand for students that want to be at quant in quant, and especially in the US financial markets. And so there is a level of hustle that we need to see because you need to be able to outcompete, not only just students in other peer programs, but you're competing with undergrads, with PhDs. You're competing with people that are studying masters in data science, computer science, all kinds of majors. And so I think when I get into an interview and somebody is just either unprofessional or, I've had people use profanity in interviews before, which they think they're being funny, but it does give you pause because we are professional masters. Or I always tell the story, and this is so many years ago, but I had a young lady in an interview. It was time to interview, and she popped up and she was in like a bubblegum pink terry cloth bathrobe and had just gotten out of the shower, and it was so inappropriate. And needless to say, she did not get it admitted. So that's where I say treat this like you would a job interview. Really be able to articulate what it is that you want to do professionally. Have a sense of direction. As again, as you probably know, you don't long gone are the days where you can join a program like this, especially in a fall semester. Our spring may be a little different, but our fall semester, um, you know, you, students are having to start applying for internships before they ever take a class because of the way that the recruiting timelines have moved up. And so it is absolutely key that students start prepping way in advance. If you're even thinking about applying to a program like this, go ahead and start going through the practical guide for quant finance interviews and practice your elite code and coding. You need to be doing that. And then, you know, the students that when I say what is it that you think you want to do professionally, oh, I don't know yet. That's not an answer anymore. You have to come in kind of knowing what roles you might want to target because you really have to hit the ground running, arguably before you even join. So
Right.
I would say one of the big things that I see or the big hiccups are people that when they get into the interview are either unprofessional or I can tell they're just not as driven for this. We want to find those guys, those young men and women that are, excited and passionate about this field, have maybe been doing project work in this space, who are really eager to, get out there and submit 1,000 applications for internships. That we really feel like can hustle. And so if I get a sense that this person is not going to do that, then that's a problem.
Okay. And you okay. Oh, okay. So many questions in my mind. Okay. So you mentioned okay about the fall semester, right? And this is like a lot of students asking like how is spring semester different from a fall semester?
I'm so glad you asked this question, especially now because we're right in our spring kind of deadline window. So I'm really glad to talk about this. Again, this all stems from the competitiveness of this field, and employers in these financial services companies are trying to outcompete each other for talent. And their method for doing that, apparently, in the last several years, has been to just move up their timelines for their application windows. So I joined this program 12 years ago when our faculty director, Dr. Chava, took over. So yeah, I've been here a long time. I'm aging myself. But Dr. Chava took over, hired me, and back in those days, students were applying in like October for summer internships, right? Now you have to, if you're not applying by the end of August, early mid-September, you've missed the window for internships, right? And so because those timelines have moved up so far in advance, it's becoming more of a disadvantage for the incoming fall class. And so while we do a ton of pre-prep over the summer, like we really have ramped up our pre-prep materials for students to get them more technically prepped. We've started also encouraging students to maybe consider joining in spring for this reason. Two things. One, we actually have for our specifically for our international students that join the program in spring, we have what we call an internship track. And students that are enrolled in the internship track are actually eligible to intern after one semester, so that first summer, right? Normally in the United States, you have to complete a full academic year in your program to qualify for certified practical training or CPT. However, if you're enrolled in a track of a program that requires an internship after your first semester, you're eligible to use CPT to do that internship. And so there's a couple of things. We have some students, there's always another round of applications for internship interviews in like February, March. So some students, they can come in if they secure an internship right away for that summer, great, they can do that internship. But if not, and they're open to staying 2 years, then what they can do is spend that first semester actually taking classes, doing project work, building up their resume, and then they can spend the summer doing nothing but intensive technical interview prep for the following summer's internships. And they should, in theory, be more competitive for those internships, having had that 7.5 months or so of preparation. And so that's where I say I love the spring, because if you're open to a 2 year plan, that gives you basically an extra summer to be open, to be able to find maybe even a more competitive internship. And so that has actually worked out very well. We've had some students that have joined. I would also say the academic rigor in the fall is a little bit more than the spring. And so the students that joined in spring liked coming in January to get adjusted first before the madness of the fall academics and the internship recruiting and all of that. So it has worked out well, and we doubled the size of our spring class last year.
Oh, okay, okay. And okay. And you mentioned about, let's say, about the internship thing, right? So when someone is okay. Also, just curious, what's the deadline for spring? What?
So our final round deadline is going to be October 1st. So we've got about a month or so to get
Oh, yeah.
applications in, and you can apply at any time. I always say this, you don't have to apply right up to the deadline. Whenever
Right.
you're ready, go ahead and apply, because we're going to start with interviews next week.
So, is it on rolling basis or something?
It is. It's on a rolling basis.
Okay.
The spring is a really tight window, right? The fall, we've got like months and months and months, right? But we do rolling admission, so we're actually going to start interviewing those that have already applied next week.
Also, just curious about the letter of recommendation. So I have seen two kinds of students, right? One is like they have studied mathematics and programming from the professor, and the professor is willing to, give the LOR. But let's say there's this other type in which even though they have studied, but of course they do not have maybe that much, relationship. So they tend to take from people who are from non-math, or let's say maybe non-technical background. So does that make difference when let's say the application committee sees the whole application or something?
So, my biggest piece of advice when it comes to recommendations, and hopefully our faculty would agree, I've never really actually had this conversation with them, but this is my inference. I think the people that know you the best are going to write you the best recommendations. I think sometimes people want to be impressive, and they choose people that they may not have as close a relationship with, or someone who doesn't necessarily know to the fullest extent the quality of your work. And so when they are providing references, they tend to maybe be a little bit more generic or lukewarm, or not as exciting to read, or not as, yeah, not as excited. So I think trying to find people that you think know the quality of your work best, regardless of major. I don't think it has to be math faculty or finance faculty or computer science faculty. I think if you have a great relationship with a faculty member that has seen your again, your quality of your work, I think they're going to write you a better recommendation naturally. So that's what I say. And it can be any combination of academic and professional references. So if you had a great internship supervisor, that's fine too. It doesn't always have to be faculty.
Okay. Also, I'll ask a question from which one of my student messaged me. How can someone waive off their application fee? Is there any
Okay.
way? Yeah.
We okay. We don't do application fee waivers, but I do have a reason. I mean, there's a method to that. We are a public institution. So
Okay.
we don't necessarily have maybe the same budget as some of the other programs, in full disclosure, right? But more importantly, our philosophy is we would rather spend the resources that we have maximizing opportunities for the students that are currently enrolled than handing out 300 application fee waivers to people that may or may not ever even enroll with us, right? How many people apply to a million institutions? And then, I mean, we're at the point where people will pay deposits at 10 different places and then not even tell you that they're not coming. So I would say I understand that it can be a hurdle, the application fee, but we really truly believe that being able to take that funding that we would give in application fee waivers, I mean, we're talking that could be thousands of dollars. We would rather hire an industry like a practitioner to do a workshop series, or we've been able in recent years to fund the hotel stays for our Chicago and New York industry track so that the students only have to pay for the flight, things like that, where we may not have the capacity to do so if we were giving out just application fee waivers left and right.
Perfect. Okay. Now I'll just shift it to more towards the program and not towards the admissions.
Okay.
So how rigorous is the programming? Like, because I have bunch of my friends, so many friends from Georgia Tech, because yeah. So I have more than 10 friends from Georgia Tech. So
Oh, wow.
yeah. So, and I know the rigorous, but like I just want to hear from you, like how intense is the program with when it when I talk about like the computer science thing, or let's say the mathematics, how intense is it?
It, it's pretty intense, so is working in quant, right? Like, um, again, the field has become so competitive that we are having to perhaps screen a little harder on those metrics of mathematical and computational preparation coming into the program than we did in years past, because again, we want to be able to get as advanced as we can. And so if we're having to sort of take steps backward, because people are maybe less prepared, then it slows everything down and doesn't allow us to fully teach our students some of these more kind of cutting edge techniques. And so I would say the coursework is pretty rigorous. I mean, I never want to sugarcoat that fact. But I think that rigor is excellent preparation for what working as a quant really means.
Right.
It's high pressure, it's intense. Not all roles, but many, right? Pretty high pressure environment. And so you need to be able to work quickly. You need to be able to, you need to be able to handle a high volume of work. And so we sort of put our students through that maybe a little bit in the program so that they are adequately prepared for the realities of this industry.
Okay, and like how diverse is like the class profile? Is it like and this is one of my interesting questions, because I don't know, like yeah, I feel like when you have a diverse community you learn a lot,
Oh
but like,
yeah.
I just want to understand like how diverse the maybe both from ethnicity point of view and even academics like point of view.
Yeah, we're very diverse from an academic. We're diverse in both areas. So, for example, this fall class we had, I think 60% of our students were international students, and 40% of our students were U.S. citizen or U.S. permanent resident students, and they come from all different backgrounds. And we're pretty globally diverse as well. It's not just like we have a student who's from Morocco enrolled this year. We have students obviously from China, from India. We have student from Russia. We have a number of students from South America. So it's not only just diverse, but it's very globally diverse, which is exciting. Best part about my job is that I get to talk to people from all over the world. To me, it's an honor, and I love interview season because I get to connect with people all over the globe, and it's amazing. We have a young lady in the program from Croatia right now, so like it's really really cool. Just I can't think of many jobs that get to do that on a regular basis. So it's a lot of job satisfaction for me. And then in terms of the academic backgrounds, I would say most of our students are from STEM degrees, unless they maybe double majored in finance or something like that. On occasion, we will take chances on students that have a background in business or finance. So I don't want to discourage anyone that comes from more of a business or pure finance background. But I would say if that's the case, then we're going to want to see, have you done extra classwork in math and coding, whether in a formal academic setting or maybe outside on your own independently to sort of supplement, because again, we're not going to be able to go back and teach basics of these things. And so it's important that you're coming in prepared.
Right, and does like doing certifications from Coursera, because I don't know, like that this is the only, while I was back in India,
Mhm.
even though like I had like all the prerequisite complete, but then also people used to say that you can do certain certifications from Coursera. So does that make a lot of difference, or is it like more from you are looking let's say credentials more from a universe, I mean from a university, in a university setting, like how does it go?
This is always a difficult question for me to answer because I think if you were to ask our faculty specifically, they would probably say that they would prefer a regionally accredited institution or something like that. However, these days, fewer people are asking the question and just using some of these sort of online platforms for their learning. And so I think if you can make a, kind of a clear narrative in the application for why you decided to use these platforms for your supplemental learning, it can be I'm working a full-time job. I just don't have the capacity to go and sit in a classroom or do classes online. But at nighttime, I work on this certificate program or something like that. I think if you can kind of paint the picture in the narrative, then I think that makes, it makes it pretty clear. So again, I think that there has just been a cultural shift in how people learn. And so these online platforms are becoming more and more prevalent, and we're seeing it in greater volume. And so I think it's becoming, I guess, more normalized in a way.
Right. Also, and this is like a really interesting question. So you look at, and this question, I guess a lot of my followers would be really interested in. Let's say people, students come into Georgia Tech. So what are the profiles they go into? Is it like quant researcher, quant developer, quant trader, quant analyst, market risk, credit risk? Like where is the, or let's say portfolio management, or like where are people mostly placed is my, and I know it's a tough question, but
It
still.
is, it's like it's kind of an all of the above. It depends on the student, it depends on their hustle, it depends on their background. A lot of it, I mean, off the top of my head, I thought about somebody that just did a quant research internship, someone that did a trading internship, someone that was a developer. Like, on the top of my head, I can think very clearly of students that are popping the top of my head that have gone to these different roles. So it is a variety of different kinds of roles. There is, and maybe this is something. I think this is a topic worth mentioning. We're trying to sort of manage expectations a little bit better with our incoming students. Last cycle, I kid you not, if I didn't actually calculate, I couldn't, but I would venture to say at least 70%, 75% of the students, 80% of the students I interviewed told me they wanted to be a researcher or trader at Citadel, Two Sigma, Jane Street, et cetera, Optiver. And like, while I appreciate that ambition, unless you have a PhD or you have extensive research and publications in the leading journals and conferences, that's going to be a very tall hurdle to pass. And so that's where we say, our philosophy is very much shoot for the stars, but have 1,000 backup plans because those institutions are very small relative to the other types of financial institutions out there. We were just in Chicago for our industry trek last week, and we were I pulled one of the recruiters aside and I said, tell me realistically, for like about how many open positions, which was like maybe 100, 150 open positions for internships, full-time jobs. I said, how many applications did you get? And she said, oh, upwards of 50,000. And I think that was probably on the low end, honestly. So you can only imagine that some of these other potentially what some would consider more prestigious institutions are probably getting 100,000 applications plus for maybe 100 positions, right? And so that's where we have to say, you have to be realistic about the competitiveness of this market. We, instead of saying, oh, go for, we're very much shoot for the stars and again, have a million backup plans, but where are you going to have a competitive edge based on your background? If you are a superior coder, then maybe you should look at being a developer or high frequency trader. Like maybe those are the right roles for you. But if you've never done research before and you want to be a quant researcher, that could be problematic. Not saying it's impossible, but it's not going to be in some of those top tier institutions, right? So a lot of what we're trying to do with our incoming classes is say, let's expand our pie of solutions and look at all different kinds of roles. You can always turn something down, but apply to all kinds of different roles because as you apply for those roles, you'll get to learn about what they mean. And a lot of people come in thinking they want to do one thing and end up doing something entirely different because they didn't even realize how interesting that other thing could be. Right. So that's our, we do place students in all different roles across quant. But I would say, a lot of it is just managing expectations and encouraging students to keep an open mind about different kinds of opportunities given the competitiveness of it.
Right, right. Also, and this question, like even I had when I was coming to the US, you spent like $65,000, or let's say $70,000, let's say $65,000 on education, and let's say On top of it, let's say $15,000 more on the living cost, so that's like
Yeah.
$80,000, and that too, coming from a third world country. I mean, it's tough. It's really challenging because most of us, like, we come from middle class family. We
Sure.
and the thing is, in US, the education loan is cheaper. At least the interest rate, it's on the lower side. Uh,
Right.
Back in India, it's like 11 to 12%, and that is pretty
That's
high,
right.
right? So,
Hmm.
so one question that I often get is like, how much a student can think of when they graduate. What's like the starting salary? I know it cannot be same depending on the years of experience, but let's say what's like the average of it, or what's like maybe the median salary that the student can think of that they can get.
Sure. I meant to get median salary from Tanya in anticipation of this question, and I didn't get it for the last graduating class. If you're interested in that, follow up with me by email, and I can give you that information. I would say our average comp tends to be in like the 135, 140 range. But I say this, that is not adjusted for cost of living.
Hmm.
Okay, so if you think about it, we have probably have a higher percentage of students that will stay, maybe not necessarily in Atlanta, but in the Southeast. So we have students that go to Charlotte and Texas and stay in Atlanta, right? And so I would say maybe about a quarter of the students every year stay in Atlanta, and then three-quarters of the students go outside of Atlanta for employment. But I would say, again, we probably place a little bit more heavily in like the Charlotte market and Atlanta and Texas than relative to other schools. So when you're thinking about a quarter of your population or 30% of your population is getting compensation in a city that is a lower cost of living, I bet if you were to adjust for cost of living, we'd be closer to some of the other programs located in New York or Chicago or wherever. So that's where I say, and also keep in mind that our tuition cost is among the lowest. We're not the lowest, but we're close.
Yeah.
So some of these programs are really expensive, and you're going to pay $4,000 to live in a shoebox in that city, right? Versus, you can have a really, you can live in a luxury high-rise apartment with every amenity on the planet for, much less, a third of that cost, or even more. So that's where I say the compensation, the return on that investment is very high because we have managed to keep our tuition costs low. I can't say what's going to happen in the future, but I will say that for the last 12 years, Dr. Chava and I have purposely not requested an increase in tuition so that we could continue to keep the cost manageable. That's been something that we've done. I had another point related to cost of living. We talked about that. It'll come back to me.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, okay. Yeah, because yeah, the issue that students generally face is, of course, like students are not afraid of taking education loan, but they are afraid
Sure.
of not getting a job. So that's why, like,
Worse.
yeah, that's why, like, this answer of yours actually give a lot of relief to you, will give relief to a lot of students, and yeah.
Well, I get the question, and someone asked me this earlier. Well, do you do scholarships? And at the moment, no. That could change. That could change. At the moment, we don't have scholarship opportunities. We do have some limited assistantship opportunities. Those are reserved for students in the second semester or beyond in the program. Because if you have any time in your first semester outside of academics, we want everybody focused on that internship search. And an assistantship comes with a work commitment, and we don't want to add anything else to your plate. So there are some limited assistantship opportunities in the second semester and beyond, but we don't have like a ton of scholarships. But I had a student, for example, it was last year, that emailed me and said, I got a $15,000 scholarship from this program. And I looked and I said, yeah, but that's still more expensive than our program, and you're still going to pay triple to live in housing expenses. And so, it's all relative. I can understand the prestige of getting a scholarship, but is it really actually bringing the cost down even lower than our program's cost? I don't know.
Yeah, it's yeah, yeah. The best thing about Georgia Tech, even NCSU for that matter, I mean they have I mean, at least Georgia Tech, NCSU have still increased, but Georgia Tech has, like, it is just the same, just the same. So genuinely love the fact, and that too, you have like great placements. So
Hmm.
that's amazing,
I
actually.
was going to say, and if I can, I have to certainly give kudos to our incredible career services team. They go above and beyond, and not only in their services and the events that they put on, and what they provide, and especially the one-on-one coaching. But I think it's in heart. I know that sounds like silly, but I have seen Tanya, who is like our coach. I mean, I have seen just the care and the thoughtfulness and and she's I think one of the best in the business. She knows exactly how to tell students to position their resume based on a role. She knows exactly how to prepare students for those behavioral mock interviews. I mean, she is incredible, but she also really cares. It's more than just numbers. It's not about, making sure we hit above 90% employment, which is always, our goal is 100% every year. We want to get everyone across the finish line, but it's that extra level of heart and care. I've seen her take calls after hours. She really cares. But on the flip side, she'll be tough. And this is what I always say is the advantage of our career services. Maybe in the moment the students may not think this, but our career team is not the kind of team that's going to just sit back and go, "Oh, we're here if you need us." They're like, "Hey, what's going on? Haven't heard from you. How many jobs have you applied for? That's not enough. You got to come meet with me. I need information." And we track, and I think this is an important point. We track every single student's progress.
Mm.
We know every interview, assuming they disclose and are in good communication. We know every round of interview they have. We know, we follow every single student's progress so that when it comes time to report for things like rankings, we don't need to send out a survey. We have that information. We know every detail about 100% of our students that are involved in career services. Occasionally we have someone that just is like doesn't show up to events or really is egregiously kind of not participating or unprofessional. Maybe they may not be involved, or somebody who's seeking for PhD programs. Obviously, they don't need to be involved in career services, so it's not a required thing. But if you opt in, we have pretty high demands of students, and we have high expectations that they're going to be aggressive and really be active participants in the process.
Okay. Okay. I have, I have just one last question. And
Okay.
yeah, I guess it was pretty solid, I believe. Yeah. So, what advice would you give to students who are applying for spring 26 and fall 26? And this might be my last question. Yeah.
Okay. I would say one of the biggest pieces of advice that I have is to really investigate the network that comes along with the program that you're looking into. One of the things that I'm excited to highlight is that next year we're actually celebrating our 25th anniversary as a program. People
Wow.
think we're new, and we're not. We've been around since 2021. And so next year we plan to actually do a huge celebration, a 25th anniversary alumni reunion, and that's going to be the day before we have our AI in the Future of Finance conference. And so our alums and our friends of the program are going to be able to attend the alumni event and then attend the conference. And so we're really excited about that. I think one of the other things I'm excited to highlight, if I can, is that our faculty director, Dr. Sudhir Chava, just launched a new Center for Finance and Technology. And why am I mentioning this along with QCF is because in the background, we've had other colleagues on my team that have really done an incredible job of spending the last 6 months to a year really connecting not just with our own programs alumni, but with alums from all of Georgia Tech that are working in financial services. So, for example, when we went to Chicago last week, not only did we invite our own programs alums, but we invited all Georgia Tech alumni, regardless of who you graduate, what program you graduated from, to be able to get together and network. And the goal of this center is to unite industry with all of what we have to offer related to finance at Georgia Tech. So that could be undergrad talent, master's at QCF talent, PhD talent, et cetera. I can't disclose, it's not publicly announced yet, but there are some very senior level C-suite executives that are going to be part of the advisory board of this center. And I can only imagine how much that's going to leverage opportunity, not just for all students interested in working in financial services at Georgia Tech, but as a byproduct, the QCF program as well. So we're very, very excited about that. And the center is possible by a very generous donation by a gentleman named Michael Mesner. He was the co-founder and CEO of Seminole Management Company Incorporated. which was an equity hedge fund. He's retired from there. And he, through a very generous donation, was able to help Dr. Chava together launch the center. So I think that's going to create a lot of network. Our network is expanding rapidly. And I think because of that, we're going to see a lot, even more, even greater connection, not only in the Atlanta area, but in New York, Chicago, and those other markets. So we're very, very excited about that. I think also trying to find a program that has a good cultural fit for you. What is important to you in a community? Because these people are going to be your lifelong network, right? So, do you want a class that's super diverse? Do you want a class that has people from different kinds of backgrounds? Especially when you're going into an interdisciplinary program, there are very few people that are subject matter experts in every kind of component of quant, right? You might be a whiz at programming but know nothing about finance, right? So we always encourage our students, find partner with those people, make friends with people whose strengths are your weaknesses so you can help each other through the coursework of the program. So looking at the cultural fit, looking at, does this look like a place that not only do you feel like you can thrive academically, but that you feel comfortable, that you feel like you can really make a good network of friends and peers. And so I think that's always an important thing as well. Um, yeah, I think that's my
That's
I don't even
awesome.
remember what the question was at this point.
I just asked like any
Piece
idea.
of advice, right? What are you looking for in a program? Look at really the alumni, the network, the industry connections, I think are really important, and the career services. If you don't have a strong career services support, you can be located in a city, but if you're not actually getting that one-on-one coaching, that makes all the difference in the world. It's amazing to have somebody, let's say you get through a second round or you keep getting stuck in the same place in your interview process and you see a pattern, to be able to, have a sounding board and come in and say, what am I doing wrong? And we say, okay, what can we do to help you? Let's talk to this professor. So having that sort of individualized career coaching, I think, is really important. So looking at the career services, looking at the alumni network, those, and looking at the cultural fit, I think are really important.
Wow, that's just awesome. Yeah. Yeah, thanks, Simon. Thank you so much, Laura. I mean, thank you so much for giving time, sharing so many things about like how to become a good applicant, and of course, like a lot of information about the program. But really, thank you and appreciate your time, and thank you for doing this.
Oh, I am so grateful for the opportunity. And for your listeners, if anybody wants to meet one-on-one, I'm always available. I'm very accessible. I'm happy to hop on a call with anyone for, 20, 30 minutes and really talk through. I can't, and this is where I say I hesitate. I can't give advice. I can't say, yeah, you're absolutely going to be admitted to the program, right? Like I don't have that authority. But I have been with the program a long time, so I see kind of trends and best practices. And so I'm happy to have a conversation if you have individual questions or, there's sometimes I do webinar information sessions and people hesitate to ask personal questions in a public forum. So I'm always happy to schedule like a one-on-one call. So if anybody wants to do that, please do feel free to reach out. And if you email through the main website, it comes directly to me anyway. So you can just email through the website.
Perfect, perfect. Thank you so much, Laura. Thank you for joining in for the podcast and sharing your experience.
Thank you. And I hope we get to keep in touch. It was lovely to finally meet you.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
All right. Take care.